It's confirmed, guys. Sony is one of my subscribers on this channel. I did a couple of videos on Xbox News, and then Sony felt bad, and they're like, well, we need to do more. And they saw my video last night talking about play at home, and like, we need to do even more. And here we go. Yet another PlayStation blog post the next day, March 18th, 2021. A deep dive into the new PlayStation 5 VR controller. I got a lot to say on this subject, so let's dive in. But before we do, that's right. All right, so let's take a look at this. This is a very interesting design. This blog post is courtesy of the PlayStation blog. As with all other blogs and such, I will post a link in the description below. Do yourself a favor. Check it out if you don't believe me. You want to read it for yourself. Interesting design here. Lots and lots of plastic. Lots going on. It looks like a lot of heft. There is some interesting design choices here, but I think I can conceptualize what they're going for. You know, with VR, it's a tough sell because VR is going to require you to feel it and to see it to understand it. You just can't explain to somebody what VR is until you've done it. It's the truth. It's a very tough sale. I bought VR Gen 1, really, on PlayStation 4, knowing full well it wouldn't get a ton of support, knowing full well the games wouldn't be the best ever, but still finding a fun groove with it and enjoying it for what it was. I feel like with PlayStation 5's VR 2, they've understood it even more. They've learned from their mistakes, and this is going to be even better. And I think that's cool. It's a good entry point into VR. I think the original VR, honestly, is a good entry point into VR. So this blog post comes from the Senior Vice President of Platform Planning and Management. And they deep dive the PlayStation VR controller. They say it takes a unique design which takes on an orb shape, which allows you to hold the controller naturally while using a high degree of freedom. With this, there will be no constraints on how you move your hands. Now, that was a big key feature of the previous PlayStation VR. The problem with VR Gen 1 was it used the Move controllers, which were basically wands that you held in a grip. You make a fist grip. So you were always holding a fist. So even if you couldn't extend your fingers, really, you couldn't extend your hand really much more than your wrist because you were always holding something like a can of Coke. You're always holding it. You could only think about that. Just visualize what range of motion you would have with your hand if your fingers were always locked in a clamped position. So they have gone past that design. This controller, you're basically sticking your hands through the controller. You're going to be able to wiggle your fingers. It's a much less strain on your wrists. Your hands will be open more. It's a more natural feel. And I think it's going to be a more natural feel. I don't have one yet. This says iconic design that will change how VR games are played. So you could see it's got the thumb grip on each side with the controller split. You got your two buttons on one side, two buttons on the other. Now, this is an interesting choice as well on the Move because it was more designed for that grip button. You had more face buttons. So this will be an interesting design choice they've made to, lower down some of the buttons you're going to get. But I feel like this is going to be more intuitive. And this is definitely going to allow you more range of motion on your fingers, for sure. Notice that they did move one of the buttons off to the side, and you still do have a trigger button, which you had on the Move. But you are still ultimately losing buttons. I want to be very clear on that. You are still definitely losing buttons, for sure. That may not matter, though. It depends on the game. Some of those games, like I think Skyrim, ultra complex in virtual reality. Tons of buttons for moving and mapping and spells and quicks. It was a lot. It was a lot to manage, and not having that situational awareness of, not that you really look down at your hands when you game. I mean, I don't. Maybe some people still do. I've played enough. I know the buttons now, but not having that ability to look down at your hand and see something is difficult. And I think this is much more intuitive now. Your muscle memory is going to be very limited. You're going to have a dedicated button for your index finger. You're going to have a dedicated button for your thumb. You're going to, or your thumbs will have 2 buttons there, but you'll have dedicated buttons for other things. And I think that may make the control a bit more intuitive, which I'm hopeful for, because that was always the hard thing. People always wanting to look down at their hands. And back before the world ended, I had people over. We'd play virtual reality, and they constantly would like, wait, what do I do? And I'm like, okay. And they got the headset on. They can't see me. And I'd grab their thumb, and I'm like, press this button. This is how you jump. Press this button. This is how you shoot. They're like, oh, okay. Like I kind of need to see it to visualize it. So let's take a look at some of these features besides the design, which I think is actually very interesting. We're going to get adaptive triggers. So each VR controller, both left and right, will include an adaptive trigger button that adds tension when pressed, just like on the DualSense controller. When you take this kind of mechanic and apply it to VR, the experience will be amplified to the next level. That's interesting. I like the adaptive trigger approach. I have many times spoken of how much I love the DualSense controller and how it has amplified gameplay for me personally. How much more satisfying a kill in Call of Duty is with the DualSense controller when you're shooting a big sniper rifle and the controller vibrates for 2 or 3 seconds after a shot. Or when you're playing a game like Astrobot, or they even implemented this in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the bow tension, how when you're pulling back, it gets tighter and harder, and you feel it. You really feel it in your finger. It really makes you feel like you're there. I think when you amplify virtual reality with this, you're going to have a really fun time. Haptic feedback, that's great that we're going to finally get some haptic feedback. We'll have to see how that plays out. Keep in mind, virtual reality, the challenge with virtual reality, obviously, is you're not actually doing anything. So if you're swinging a sword through a shield and it vibrates because the shield's blocking it, well, your arm's going to keep going because there's no shield in front of you in real life, even though your arm in the virtual reality world will stop and vibrate back. Wondering how your brain will process that synapses in terms of virtual space may make you a little dizzy. We'll have to see that. I'm excited for it, but I'm nervous at the same time. I think when you start implementing a lot of sensory overload in your brain, that's how you get VR lag really quick. I'll be curious to see how haptic feedback pans out. Finger touch detection. The controller can detect your fingers without pressing any areas where you place your thumb, index, or middle fingers. This enables you to have more natural gestures. This is a really smart idea. This is really relying on that basic Kinect technology we saw so many years ago. The idea that if you're holding your fingers like this in a fist, or if you point your hands outward a little bit, more like you're sticking your hand out like you're doing an OK sign, or you're sticking your fingers out, you're pointing even with your index finger, the system will detect that. That's smart. That's really interesting. I'll be curious to see how precise that mechanic is, number one, and number two, how game developers utilize that. It's basically a free button press, essentially. You're going to get a new tracking set, of course. It's going to be better than it was before. It better be. You're going to get some action buttons and analog sticks, which are basically the face buttons. Nothing really to see here. You're going to have your grip button, your trigger button, options button, and they talk about what the grip button can be used, which is basically your index finger in the back. That was your primary button in the Move controllers on PlayStation VR Gen 1, essentially. That was your go-to for accepting menus, grabbing things, shooting, picking things up. So it's the most natural feeling way to use the controller. So of course, they're going to leave that. So this is cool. I'm very interested in this. I think this could be really neat. Virtual reality, like I said, it's not for everyone. I do enjoy virtual reality quite a bit. But I can't play it forever. I need to take a break, and I'll be curious to see what games they use, how they implement this to really make this an immersive experience. But if they can pull this off, and it's plug and play, just like PlayStation Gen 1 was on PS4, they're going to have themselves a hot product, because you don't need a high-end computer. You don't need a huge space to set up cameras around you in a perimeter or anything like that. This is just, plug it in, put a camera on top or near the front of your television, and go. We'll wait and see, but this is great. They are not abandoning VR. We knew they weren't, and now we have even more. So this is great. Thank you guys for watching. Leave some comments below. Let me know your thoughts on PSVR 2. I don't know if that's what they're calling it, but that's what I'm going to call it. I got to get out of here. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.